There we are. We are going live. Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to have you once again in this last session of power and its ramifications for India. Our first session was an overview by Praveer Sinha, Managing Director of Tata Power. Our next one was by Ashish Khanna, President and Head of Solar Power in Tata Power. Our third one was by a professor on nuclear energy. And now we have the penultimate program by JP. More details about JP to begin by Dr. Mhaiskar a little later. But before I begin, let me mention two small things.
Mr. Bhaskar, we lost you.
Yeah, we lost you.
Sorry, the Wi-Fi glitches.
I don't know if shall I begin or he wants to show some slides. He had to show 3 slides.
Why did Free Press Journal decide to come together?
Yeah. Mr. Bhaskar, we lost you for a minute, so you can repeat a bit.
No, you're on mute, Mr. Bhaskar. You're on mute.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about this one. My fiber network broke in the Wi-Fi, so I'm on telephone on mobile tethering. So once in a while, you may have these interruptions, but that was unavoidable at the last minute. As I said, Narsingh Manju University, NMIMS and FPG.
We lost him again.
Yeah, that's going to be an issue.
We are both involved in educating the general public, and that is why there's a convergence of views. There was a second reason why, and that is because both of us are involved in talking about policies that will shape the future of India, and energy is a crucial issue for the country today. And before I pass on this session,
oh God.
to Sharad Mhaiskar, let the audience has thought about. Just a minute. I'm getting the wrong screen. Not this.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
No, not this one, not this one, not this one. Here we are. Okay. Okay. This is the wind energy polls that we had. When we began the series, right in the beginning of the first session, we asked wind energy, people thought only yesterday. Wind energy seems to have got a bigger share in the renewable basket. Maybe because the audience has greater audience in the first session. Wind energy, this one. And the second part is wind energy is most successful in India in the following regions. Most people believed that it's successful in South India and then in West India and not successful in other parts of India. What the right answers are, and that is something that you will have to talk about. But I thought I should share these findings with you before the session begins. Dr. Mhaiskar, you have to introduce our speaker for today.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bhaskar. Thank you. Good evening to you all. First, let me thank you all for joining this webinar. I know all of us are experiencing a huge fatigue of attending webinars, whether you are in the industry or whether you are in the education sector. Ever since we have gone into a lockdown forced on us because of the COVID-19. But let me assure you that this is a webinar which would be refreshing and fatigue reducing and lively one. And I say this because there are on 3 counts. The first one is, of course, the topic of energy and its future is absolutely crucial to our progress. Secondly, we have amongst us an eminent expert in this sector. Mr. Jayarama Chalasani, JP, as he's known in the industry, who's now the advisor to Suzlon Group. And thirdly, and more importantly, this is not a webinar on COVID-19 where you talk about vaccine, politics, and politics on that and so on. It's a webinar on technology and technology management, which is very dear to our hearts at NMIMS. And its implications are very important because energy sector is an important driver to India's progress. But before we begin and hear JP, I would like to give a brief background about his career. JP brings to the table a rich experience of about 35 plus years in the Indian infrastructure industry with a blend of both public and private sectors at companies like NTPC, Reliance, Punj Lloyd, and Suzlon. He started his career with NTPC and he is also known to have transformed the Reliance Power. He's a mechanical engineer by profession and is widely acclaimed for his skills in project management and people leadership and people skills. Mr. Chalasani was the group CEO of Suzlon Energy till recently and is at present advisor to the group. Today, indeed, we have a techno manager who has excelled with his vast experience in the power sector in general, across all the domains of the power sector and recently in the wind power area. I now request Mr. Chalasani to give his views on the future of the power sector in general and maybe a bit about wind energy, its future, and so on. Thank you. JP, you can continue.
Thank you, Sharad, and thank you, Mr. Bhaskar. And first of all, thanks for that very, very generous introduction.
It was not. It was just mention of facts.
And good afternoon to each one of you who joined on this. And just before we commenced this live streaming, I was telling Sharad and Bhaskar that I normally like people live in front of me, where you can talk to the people, talk to their faces, and see the reaction and things like that. But unfortunately, everything is now screen. So I want to talk to people, it's screen. I want to do business, it's a screen. And I want to talk to my loved ones, it's a screen. So everything has become a screen. Screen has become part of our life today. I think we can't really help it for some time to come. And before I start, I think like mutual funds, I have a caveat. I am not a wind expert. Okay, so let me be very, very clear. My experience in the wind sector is only last 4 years when I became the group CEO of Suzlon. But however, what I bring to the table is 4 decades of my experience in power sector. I worked across the gamut of power sector, be it the generation, transmission, distribution, trading, name it, I've been there. So what I'm going to bring to the table today, I'm going to look at the interaction with each one of you is that how does the wind sector dovetail into the power sector, and what are the growth potentials, what are the opportunities and challenges for the wind sector is what I look at it. And I'm looking this more as an interaction, not like, I know something and I want to preach, I want to tell everyone who is live joined in this conference. I'll just initially, for maybe the 10-12 minutes, I'll just speak about what my views on wind sector before we throw it open for interaction, which is what I prefer. I would 3 parts of it. One is that I would see what is the canvas of wind sector today, because I always believe that it's important for us to understand the canvas when we start commenting about a particular subject is important.
Very true. Second is
more than the opportunities, I'll speak about the challenges first, because Indian power sector first comes challenges, then comes opportunities, because alphabetically C is much before the war. So therefore, we need to talk about C. We have to cross C before we come to war. So that's how I'm going to speak about. Talking about the canvas is that, first, let me talk about the renewable sector. Obviously, there has been a huge amount of interest, huge amount of stress from the government in the renewable sector. We are today at about 87 gigawatts, which is 23-24% of our installed capacity, which was unbelievable, let's say, about 10 years back, that we will be able to reach this sort of a number. We always used to be, renewable energy always used to be a fringe player. So today it's become a main player. 23-24% by capacity, more than 10% by energy is what we reached the level. And we have a target of 175 gigawatt. I do have, personally have reservations about reaching 175 gigawatt by, I don't know, again, March 22 or December 22. I'm confused about the target is for which one. But still, the government thinks that 87 gigawatts, what we did, plus about 40-41 gigawatts of under implementation and another 30 gigawatts of bidding done. They still hope that 160 gigawatts is what we should be able to reach. That's the government expectation. Coming to the wind sector, we are at 37 gigawatts, which is 10% of our total capacity, 370 gigawatts. Wind, of course, has been a leader all along. But then in the last few years, the solar has been growing at much faster rate. So therefore, solar almost caught up with wind sector, wind on this. We will speak more about that. There is not like wind versus solar. I'm a person who is wind plus solar. Otherwise, it can't survive. Wind can't survive without solar. Solar can't survive without wind is my view.
I see.
So 37 gigawatts and again here 60 gigawatts is the target. The government still feels that with about 9 gigawatts under implementation, another 3 gigawatts bid out, they still feel that we will reach around 48, 49 gigawatts instead of 60 is what we're talking about. There have been significant changes in the wind sector in the last few years. The most important thing is the technology wise. And first thing is the size of wind turbine. We used to talk about 0.5 megawatt, 0.75 megawatts, 1.25 megawatts. Today, we're seeing anything about 2 megawatts. We're talking about 2.1 all along, but now we're talking about anywhere between 2.5 to 3.3 megawatts. I think that's we can't go beyond that, though it's available world over. I think that's what is the size is. But more important than the size is also we increase our hub heights, okay, which is very, very important for us because when you're at 50, 60 meters hub height versus today, we're talking about 140, 160 meters. When you reach that hub height, many of the sites which are low wind potential sites would actually become a high wind potential sites because you're going higher and higher. So because of these technology changes, that is what we're talking about, high efficiency levels. We're talking about higher CEFs and things like that. It completely changed. So therefore, that's what is significantly has happened in terms of technology. And obviously, this led to the reduction in the tariffs and reduction in the costs. But more important for me is that what many of us don't recognize is the operation maintenance services of these turbines. Today, the way the operation maintenance has become important for this sector, we have reached the levels of 97% plus machine availability by everybody does it. And we're getting into digitization of the service business. So therefore, there's a constant improvement innovation in the service business, which we do look at it. Earlier, it used to be a different scenario. And the third is on the commercial side, we moved from FIT, feed-in tariff, to bidding, which we'll talk more about it today, what's happening on that. And then also the profile of the customers has significantly changed. So it used to be more of a retail and the captive consumers. To today, it is mostly the PE fund-driven IPPs and large utilities, both foreign and domestic. So therefore, there's a whole gamut of change in the wind sector. That's the canvas on which we're talking about. When we look at any questions, this is what is the canvas. But what are the challenges? The significant challenge I look at is the capacity addition. Okay. It's drastically slowed down. It's substantially slowed down in the last few years, the capacity addition in the wind sector. I remember in FY17, which was the last year of feed-in tariff, we as a country added 5.5 gigawatts in one single year. And FY18, FY19, FY20 put together, 3 years put together, we had done less than that. So capacity has significantly slowed down. So that's one of the problems is, of course, moving over from feed-in tariff to bidding system and stabilization of the bidding system. And also we got into a huge amount of hurdles in terms of the infrastructure, whether it's a land or it is in terms of the right of way or the connectivity. That's because, again, the type of bidding what we had, because bidding moved from the state level to the central government level, where the only parameter for bidding is a tariff. So everybody wants to set up projects in the states where there is a high wind. Everyone wants to concentrate in Gujarat. So suddenly you had the huge amount of demand for land and ROWs and things like that. And also simultaneously state government came up and changed the rules of the game midway of the game, and everybody got stuck. So various reasons why capacity addition has really, really slowed down. I'm not seeing a significant ramp up happening in year or two as well. So that's one major thing. Second is, which is what most of us are facing today, is that change from feed-in tariff to competitive bidding. And like any other sector, we got into bidding war. India is famous in infrastructure sector to get into bidding war. So we bid at such low tariffs. And today we are now talking about sustainable or not sustainable. We're talking about the cost, which is sustainable or not sustainable. So therefore, that's where we are in. Some projects are falling victims of the low tariffs. There is a whole gamut of issues commercially there. But as a side effect of this is, you're seeing a huge difference in tariff in the feed-in tariff regime, which used to be 4.5, 4.75 rupees per kilowatt hour, to let's say 2.4, 2.45. Now it's around 2.85. So some of the states which have a significant amount of PPS at the feed-in tariff projects are now started, looking at how do I wriggle out of the PPS. Okay, so therefore you got into contractual issues, and not only the contractual issues, they're also started looking at how do I actually reduce taking the power from these capacities. So you talk about backing down. We're talking about the power not being paid. So we got into various set of issues purely because the tariff changed from X to maybe 0.5x or 0.6x. So that's the set of issues we have. And that's one of the challenges what we're facing. And the other challenge is integrating with the grid. When you're a fringe player, it's a different case. But when you're a significant capacity, today, if the renewable energy is 10%, 11% by energy and 23%, 24% the capacity, you got to be part of the grid discipline. But unfortunately, unlike a conventional sector, in the renewable sector, you do have a challenges of making the grid. So scheduling and forecasting, it's very, very easy. Having worked in the conventional sector for so long, it's very easy to do scheduling and forecasting in the conventional sector. But when it comes to wind, especially more than the solar, in wind, so we always talk about many times it is because wind is also the proprietor called BB, Bhagwan Bharosa. So because you really don't know how the wind is going to blow. So therefore, if you talk about 15-minute cycle or 5-minute cycle, which they're thinking of talking about, how do you do it? Those are the challenges what we're facing. But much more significant issue, in my opinion, the single challenge, if I need to name, is integrating the renewable energy itself with the power sector. Unfortunately, we have, it's my strong view I have. Unfortunately, we have two different ministries. We have a Minister of Power, we have a Minister of MNRE, whatever you call it. Significant capacity addition today is happening in renewable energy, much more than year after year, much more than the conventional power. For this purpose, there is a necessity for planning with various other organizations like Power Grid, Central Electricity Authority, CEA, or for operations with respect to POSACO. Unfortunately, all these agencies come under Minister of Power, not under MNRE. MNRE, in my opinion, with my due apologies, is still don't understand the intricacies of power sector. It's a very, very intricate sector. You move one lever somewhere, 5 other levers move without your knowledge. Okay. That integration of renewable energy with power sector is what actually creating a lot of hurdles. How do we integrate these two is one of the biggest challenges what we have. Fine, just want to keep on, don't want to keep on talking about challenges, but looking at the last segment is opportunities. I believe that the huge amount of opportunity for wind, but not as wind. I'm not talking. So it's about renewable energy. I think it's more from now onwards, it's a hybrid or round the clock. Whether you have a wind plus solar for storage, wind plus solar for storage in terms of pumped hydro or whatever it is, but that is what is going to be there. In my opinion, solar alone can't sustain on a long-term basis. Wind alone can't sustain on a long-term basis. They have to be married together. That's why in the beginning, I made a comment that it can't be wind versus solar. That won't survive. Neither the wind players will survive, nor the solar players will survive. As we move ahead, it has to be wind plus solar is what is important. There's a huge amount of potential now. We just started seeing the RTC bids, we started seeing hybrid bids coming in. That's what is going to be the way. Other one I believe for the wind also is the decentralized distribution generation for rural sector. One turbine for 2-3 villages together. There's a huge potential there. Other segment which we are not tapped till now is repowering. A huge potential for repowering. There are issues on the repowering we can speak about. And the last one I see opportunity is long-term consolidation of the players, both on the power generation segment where the IPPs to call about or utilities to call about, or the OEM side. I see a consolidation going to happen. In fact, I read a report where it says that in the next 8 years, globally there will be only 3 OEMs which will have more than 90% market share. So there is going to be consolidation because you're forced to do a cost control. You're forced to do a cost cutting. Efficiency becomes more and more important. So therefore, too many players can't survive. Okay? So I think that's what we're going to see as an opportunity for people who have a deep pockets to do a consolidation. And these are the set of opportunities what I look at it. So that's what, in short, if you want to say what is the canvas, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. But Dr. Mhaiskar, why don't you begin with the question?
Thank you, JP, for giving us deep insights and giving us a complete spectrum of the opportunities and problems that we have. Indeed, this is a very good insight in the energy sector and wind energy to some length. While you were talking on the future of this sector, several questions came to my mind, as were in the last session that we had with Praveen. And I'm sure the audience must be yearning to ask so many questions. Let me, before we go to the audience and Bhaskar takes over, let me just ask you a few questions. One of the questions which I also asked in the last session was, given the call that the Prime Minister has given of the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is very commonly asked every time, and the urge that is there, we see in every citizen of the country, what is the position readiness of the country for moving towards this Atmanirbhar Bharat? Are we really competent? And are we really poised to take in the next few years, become independent in this sector? Is there enough research carried out in this country? And is there enough enterprise and will within the country, in the industry and the government? And if not, what are the changes you would like to have? A lot of questions around this, I should say. JP?
Yeah, I think they talking about the wind sector first on this. I think the wind sector is the one which actually meets the criteria of Make in India.
Okay.
So we have a 10 gigawatt capacity of wind capacity in this country. We are hardly using. In fact, the current capacity utilization is 15 to 20% of that. We have a huge capacity, and in fact, India can actually become a hub for exports for as far as the wind manufacturing is concerned.
Interesting.
Not just the wind turbines, even the component manufacturing of the wind turbines. There's a huge amount of capacity there. So I don't see, as far as the wind sector is concerned, I don't see any issue at all with respect to that. It's always been Make in India earlier also, and it will continue to be Make in India. In fact, we should encourage the more exports of wind.
Export.
So, in fact, it actually fits into the thing what we're talking about is that India should become a hub for exports for energy sector. Wind actually means. As obviously in solar, we have a set of issues in terms of the module manufacturing and things like that. But I think what I've seen is that India is the resilience. If we decide that this is the only way we want to grow, and entrepreneurs respond. So there is area to be covered in terms of solar becoming completely indigenous manufacturing. There will be pains for a certain period of time, but that's the only route we want to go, and we have decided that this is the only way we will do. I think we will respond. But you will have some pains in the transition period as far as the solar is concerned. In the conventional, we never had an issue. We have a huge amount of capacity, whether it's BHL or the private sector. We can do any capacity, and supercritical, all of that we have the capacity. I really don't see in the big issue, except for the solar for a transition period. I don't see for energy sector, for the power sector, Atmanirbhar being any issue at all. In fact, it's the other way around.
Okay, good. So there is no dependency on China or any other country. If we decide tomorrow to go in for any components, we can have in India.
In wind, 100%.
In wind,
I can say on this. In solar, as I said, that I think we will have our for some time our capacity addition can slow down in solar because there's a significant amount of imports happen from China. There will be pain in the transition period as far as solar is concerned. But if that is what we want, as a country, and I think we should be able to withstand that pain and take some pause. It will impact capacity addition for a few years, but move over a period of time.
The recent coal sector reforms, with coal being quickly available, perhaps also at a lower cost. In the last one of the webinars, we said that coal sector is in a sunset era now. Will this hamper the quick switch to the renewable energy? Oh, is he lost or?
I think there's a problem with the network.
JP with JP's network or?
Yeah, JP's network. There's a little problem. I don't know. I thought first it was my network playing up, but I think JP's network is also playing up.
Huge demand on the bandwidth.
Yes. Okay, he's going to come back there.
Yeah, he's reconnecting.
Sorry, my iPad hang.
Yeah, it happens. Yes.
So I was just talking about the coal sector reforms. Now that coal will be available quickly and at a lower cost, will this hamper the quick switch to or fast switch to the renewable energy?
Well, I think the coal sector is, again, I think it's a long overdue. Coal sector reforms, long overdue.
Yeah,
we should have done this few decades back.
Now it's too late.
I was involved in developing a large coal mine when I was in Reliance. That's when I came to know that the technology what we had, the operation practices what we had in Indian coal mining is the Stone Age. Okay. Unfortunately, because whereas in power sector we had an organization like CEA which was working under Minister of Power, so we were able to get, whether it is a generation or it's a transmission, we always had the latest technology in this country, always, and we were equal to the world best. But in coal sector we had a CMPDA which was working under Coal India. Okay. It's like the CEA working under NTPC. So therefore, we never developed that sector. My view is that more than the future this thing's coal sector reforms, if it comes in, if we're able to reduce the cost of existing coal production and reduce the fuel cost of existing power generating capacity. That itself is a big help.
Yeah.
There is a huge feasibility of reducing the cost of coal which is being produced today, and which would help even the existing set of consumers. So therefore, bringing the coal sector reforms, and if you have a pooled cost of coal comes down, and even the existing plants get benefited, then obviously the cost of power comes down, and that would one way help our requirement of the distribution sector becoming commercially viable. So I think this is should have been done long back, and we should do it on fast track basis, reduce the coal cost significantly in India.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to help. It's going to in any manner hamper the renewable energy, because we need to coexist. We have if you want to become a huge we want to maintain our third economy in the world and things like that, and we need to have all types of power, the renewables and coal, especially the large peated power stations with low cost of power should still continue, in my opinion.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Just one small question, Bhaskar, in the end. This MNRE target of 60,000 megawatts by 2022, you're saying, you don't know it's June or December, whichever way, 2022. Is it ambitious? Is it feasible? How do you look at it?
See, that's why I said that today we're at 37 gigawatts. And the last 3 years, we did less than 5.5 gigawatts. And we're left with two more years. It's left to anybody's guess how much we will do. And this year, especially again, with COVID, how long it takes for us to get back and do, we don't know. So therefore, personally, in my view, it is, I don't say it's ambitious. I'd say it's impossible. Okay. So,
it's
but the
not
government is
like a 5 trillion, not something like a 5 trillion economy, which we have in mind.
I don't want to comment on that. So, but government itself is now talking about 60 gigawatts to 49 gigawatts. Okay, so, but even if you want to do 49 gigawatt, 12 gigawatt more to be done. So I doubt. Yeah. So in my opinion, that we will reach somewhere around 42 to 45 gigawatts, not more than that.
I see. Okay. Fine. Thank you, Bhaskar. We should, I think, hear from the audience also and hear from you. You're muted.
Mr. Bhaskar, you're muted.
Okay, here we are. I have two questions on my side before I take on the questions from the audience, and I've got lots of questions from the audience. The first question is it solar and wind? Why?
Yeah, it's because see, let's look at it. Today, we are only talking about the capacity and energy being generated from this capacity. We are not trying to match the generation curve versus the demand curve.
Okay.
It's very, very important to match the generation curve versus demand curve. If your generation at some point of time and your demand is some other time, then what's the use of the generation? You still need to have alternate sources to meet the demand. So therefore, today, if you have a solar separate, you have wind separate, when they give out the power versus the peak requirement of the distribution utility is completely different. Okay? And the moment you club these two, there is to some extent the generation curve over the day and over the seasons, flattens to some extent. So therefore, it becomes beneficial to the distribution companies, plus your transmission capacity utilization goes up. And on top of it is what you need to add the storage and make this as like a conventional power, reach about 70, 80%, 60, 70%, at least the PLF. That's the only way time when the renewable energy players can really think will go big. Otherwise, in my opinion, that at some point of time, there'll be a stop. If you look at today, the states which have states like AP, which has a huge amount of the renewable capacity compared to their portfolio, that's what they're doing. They're backing down. So therefore, for the survival of the sector, it's not for anything else. Survival of the sector, it's necessary for us to move from wind to solar plus wind, plus either storage or whatever you want to do it, move towards RTC. It's mandatory. When you've already reached 23, 24% by capacity as a share, if you don't do that, then this sector will have will have a full stop, in my opinion.
Okay, but now this balancing was important till yesterday. With better and better storage facilities coming up, low cost storage facilities coming up, each sector can grow by itself because storage takes care of the balancing.
Yeah, see, how you do it, it's all a commercial. Okay?
Yes. It depends on the price of storage. If the price of storage becomes...
Yeah. If I'm a wind player, so I have an option just for wind plus storage. I have an option plus wind plus solar plus storage. Okay. Which option actually gives me the lowest cost of energy?
Okay, so you look at the trade-offs.
Combinations.
At the end of the day, the flattening of your generation curve at the lowest cost is what it is. It's not my love for solar. It's not the love for my wind. At the end of the day, Indian power sector only loves one, which loves the tariff, nothing else. It's least bothered about power is coming from where, wind, this or that. It's the tariff which matters.
Okay. Lots of people have asked me questions about the employment potential of this industry. For example, there are about 10 people who asked me the same question. What are the opportunities for employment in this industry?
I think this is one sector which always had a huge amount of opportunities. That's what I say. And a simple signal is that the 40 years I stuck to the sector, obviously because it provided opportunity for me to grow in this sector. And there are enough people like Anil Siddhartha and me and all, we all just grew up in the sector. So the one is that if with this trend of moving from imports to Atmanirbhar, obviously will open up the manufacturing sector further. Like as I said, that today if you have a 10 gigawatt capacity, manufacturing capacity of the wind, we're not operating them. So if you're not operating them, obviously there is no employment potential there. If that capacity starts getting operated, there's a huge amount of employment opportunities there. So I think that with this government policy of Atmanirbhar, obviously it will go up, and more projects we create. Okay? That's where you have a huge amount of opportunity for semi-skilled and skilled workers as well. Like solar has been, even in fact, the last year we did about more than 8 gigawatts of renewable capacity, even in the current circumstances, 8.7 gigawatts or so. So if that becomes, let's say, 12, 13, 14, 15, and a huge amount of projects, so obviously give a huge amount of opportunities for skilled and semi-skilled, as well for people like me, who are the commercial oriented, technical oriented people. I do see that there's a significant potential, especially with the current policies. It's only going to come. I think we are at the lowest point now, and from here I only see it has to grow, employment opportunity.
Brilliant.
Not go away.
Brilliant. Okay. There's a person called Isaac Emmanuel asks, what new business models does India need to make wind energy successful?
That's what I mentioned, that wind on its own will not become successful. While we continue to work on technology, there is a limit to which you can reduce the cost of energy through our technology, because we actually harness all of that, especially with respect to the onshore wind turbines. The future, through the technology, your cost of energy is going to be lower and lower. I mean, improvement in the cost of energy is. And also what is happening is that with more and more capacity addition, the good potential sites are getting exhausted. Okay. So now we will get into the sites where the wind potential is lower and lower. So that the moment you get into that, the cost of energy will further go up.
Cost of energy goes up, yes.
Yeah, unless we get on to repowering and then trying to use the old sites, low turbines and all that. So therefore, the only way that for us to survive is that, and also looking at the requirement of the sector, is that the wind plus solar plus, whatever we call about storage and making it as RTC. That is the only route in which the sector will survive. Forget about, I'm not talking from the point of view, my interest is sector. Let me talk about that, because I work everywhere. I'm not wind or a solar or a conventional cap. So I'm a sector person. So therefore, from the sector's point of view, this is the only way we need to move ahead.
Okay. We have about 10 questions, all related to Suzlon. And the answer question is very simple. Suzlon was a darling of investors a few years ago. Will it become a darling again?
Well, there's a caveat. This question must have come because I was the group CEO of Suzlon.
You were the group CEO, and you know the company, and Suzlon was the flag bearer of the industry.
Yeah, but as I said that as of 6th of July, I vacated the position of group CEO. I'm now an advisor. So my opinion about Suzlon is not an official version. It is my opinion is like anybody else's opinion who is following the Suzlon. Let's be clear.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So it's not the group CEO or it's not the advisor to Suzlon is what is coming in. Suzlon has a huge amount of huge potential. I think that is one. I feel pride about the company, not because I worked there, but for the wind sector in this. It's been pioneer in India for the wind sector, and it has brought in the significant good the business models into the country. And as it did have some rough patches in the last 3 years, also because the sector itself had, as I said, that in FY17 was the best year for everybody, 5.5 gigawatts. Suzlon alone did 1800 megawatts. The next year, whole country did 1500 megawatts.
Yes.
In FY17, Suzlon alone did this thing. But still, Suzlon maintained always number one position or got on the number two, but in this shrunk capacity. But I think it's now with the restructuring, what has happened, it's out of the woods and it has the best products. And I personally feel that will be back and that will become a market leader in the future as well. So and I know that I've interacted with most of the clients as the CEO, and the people love Suzlon, and that will become again the darling of.
In fact, a lot of people here are. Okay, one more question that comes up is, and this again we've got more than 10 questions on the subject. India has a large coastline, 7,500 kilometers. Coast-based wind power has worked everywhere.
Offshore wind.
Yeah, see.
Onshore, offshore, both wind, both.
See, but let's be very, very clear about that. Sometime back I said that, I will repeat that statement. India is not fond of power coming from where. Okay, it's not that nuclear energy, it's a tidal energy, or it's offshore or this thing. India is fond of that power which comes at affordable rate. Okay, our entire sector elasticity, demand elasticity depends upon what is the tariff of power. And if today, if you go to the offshore, even if you do a 50% viability gap funding, it's just not viable. No distribution utility can buy. So therefore, and most of the distribution companies today, when we're in a situation where your average power procurement cost is higher than your average revenue realization, there is a question of buying expensive power and surviving. So I think it's my personal view is that offshore is good to have on radar, but that's not going to happen in India for quite some time to come.
And will it be small generating capacities or large generating capacities?
In offshore?
In all wind?
No, wind. No, wind anyway will grow. As I said, that onshore wind will grow.
Onshore wind will grow. You've got small generating capacities and large generating capacities.
No. See, today as I said in my opening comments, technology-wise, we moved to, let's say that more than 2 megawatts today, and people are talking today about 2.5 to 3.3 megawatts turbines. I think that's where we'll stabilize, because in India we can't afford to have 4 megawatt, 5 megawatt turbines because we have an infrastructure constraint. Okay, we can't move around that, and especially our wind speeds. So I think for at least foreseeable future, we will be in the range of 2.5 to 3.3 megawatt size turbines.
Okay. The next question that I get here is, how much does wind power depend on government subsidies? Because at some time it had depreciation benefits. At some time they had investment allowance benefits. Does its survival and growth depend upon these government benefits?
Say today I don't think there's any subsidy in the wind, except for, which is common for every renewable energy segment, is your transmission. Okay.
Yes.
When you're doing interstate transmission system, then you have no transmission charges and losses. That's a significant benefit what you have. Therefore, that's mainly required for the wind, because the many states don't have the wind capacity. Okay, wind potential sites. So yes, most of our wind potential sites are in those 7-8 states in the country. That's why you saw that poll also. It's basically south and the west is what most of the wind capacity is coming. That's because that's the only place where you can set up your plants. So if the Delhi needs or UP needs, you can't set up a wind capacity in those states. So what the transmission charges very well is giving is that for every state to somehow to meet the RPO obligations. Even today, if you see that our RPO obligations were hardly meeting. Okay. Today, the last year we should have met about 17%. We just met 10%. Okay. And then we are saying by March 22, we are saying we should be 21% by energy. And whole country generation last year was 10%. So therefore, for that purpose, only subsidy what we have today is the transmission. But yes, that's a big subsidy in my opinion. So, but that is, I think, was required for this purpose because the potential lies somewhere else and the consumption point lies somewhere else.
Okay. 2 more questions. One is from a Mohan Kumar who wants to know what is the potential blade repair, blade repair and coating market in India.
As I said in the beginning, so I'm not a so-called expert in wind and wind manufacturing. I work for Suzlon is fine, but it doesn't mean that I'm a manufacturing expert.
Because of wind, the blades.
But the Suzlon, in Suzlon I've seen, I don't know about other manufacturers. My knowledge is about Suzlon. Has the full capacity of the blade repair within India completely. So whatever the blade repairs, we do everything domestic, and then we have the blade testing. Means Suzlon has the blade testing capacity within India, and it has everything in India. So potential obviously will be high if everybody does in India.
Okay. One last question, and this is generic to the entire power sector, but specifically the wind sector. Land acquisition is always a problem in India. The only place where I can see power being generated without land acquisition is rooftop solar. your views on land acquisition and rooftop solar.
Some of my views are controversial. Okay.
Okay, please.
Let me put that caveat, because some of very close friends of mine, some of close colleagues who worked with me do a rooftop solar business, and they're flourishing. Conceptually, rooftop solar, I have nothing against, but I have a problem in terms of the commercial viability of the sector. So
Okay.
Today the distribution sector viability has become a problem.
Okay.
And if your rooftop solar is not going to the area where grid is not there, if you're doing rooftop solar there, it's a different issue in the remote area. But if you're doing a rooftop solar in, let's say, in urban area, and who is going for rooftop solar?
Yes.
Yeah, who is going for rooftop solar? Is the high-end domestic consumer, or the high-end commercial consumer, or a high-end institutional consumer? These are all high-end consumers for the distribution business, and they're cross-subsidizing customers for the distribution business. And there is what we're getting into the rooftop solar, and you have this net metering and everything. And more of those people go away from the distribution network without having a solution to the distribution company viability, because they still have universal service obligation. They should continue to serve the Jukki-Chopri. They should continue to serve the below poverty line people. They should continue to serve the farmers at the lowest level. You're saying that those accountability, that responsibility still remains with them, but the high-end consumers can go away by the rooftop. Commercially, I'm against that. It's like, I don't see somebody analyzing this and saying that what will happen. Conceptually, beautiful, because you're reducing the load, you're generating where the consumption point is. Technically, it's good on the grid. Everything is great. But from the commercial point of view, what is the impact on the distribution sector? The distribution utility is, I think from that angle, I do have an issue.
Except if the government, because of the pressures in the power sector, decides to reduce subsidies and the USO disappears, then everything begins to have a different picture altogether.
I'm wishing actually in my next gen again come back and work in power sector. I would like to see at that point of time some of these reforms to happen. Definitely.
Anyway, Dr. Mhaiskar, over to you. Your voice is on mute.
You're muted, sir.
Thank you, JP, for such an entertaining and, frank views that you have given to us on this sector, and, unbiased, frank views, which actually made this discussion very lively. Thank you once again for this session, and we look forward to meeting you on some other occasion in the near future. Thank you, JP.
In fact,
thank you.
And you have clarified lots of things in the power sector, which are useful for everybody, for us, and more importantly, the audience. And thank you for the audience.
The caveat, Bhaskar, is that because you're a journalist, I need to be very careful with that. The caveat is these views are purely personal, purely based on my experience, not attributable to any company, anyone else. So
that is a word of honor. It will be attributed to JP and not to Suzlon or any other company.
Not anyone else. It's as long as you say these are my comments, it's fine.
May I make one more comment?
Yeah.
Our series on power comes to an end. And we have very illustrious speakers. You are one of them. All the other three speakers before you are brilliant in their own way. The audience has benefited the most, but both Narsimha University, NMIMS, and I, and Free Press Journal have also benefited with the knowledge that all the brilliant speakers have given.
Immense benefit, yeah.
Immense benefit. And thank you to your audience for giving us a sustenance, for giving us a courage and the enthusiasm to continue with such efforts.
No, but I think let me say this. When I heard about this from you, and you've seen me that I agreed within 5 minutes of your meeting that I will do it.
Amazingly.
I didn't take time because I felt that you're providing a good platform for all of us to come together and then share our ideas. So that's what you're doing. You're creating the required enabling environment for all of us to come and debate, especially in the current situation where we're all stuck to our homes. So I think you're doing a great job, and I feel you should continue more and more.
Thank you. And I'm sure you will hear about NMIMS and Free Press Journal and sectors, and we'd like you with us whenever we can, whenever the sectors are the same that you can deal with.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Mhaiskar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you, JP. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Take care.